When most people picture World War II, they think of tanks, aircraft, and massive battles, but for the men on the front lines, survival wasn't just about firepower or tactics. It often came down to simple, improvised tricks, desperate, ingenious methods. Among German soldiers, one particular set of survival secrets stands out. These weren't about better weapons or clever strategies, and they didn't come from military manuals. They were born from necessity, the art of using whatever was around them to fight hunger, cold, and exhaustion. These tricks were whispered among soldiers, passed quietly between men who knew that without them, they might not live to see the next sunrise. To understand how these methods came to be, you have to imagine the Eastern Front. From 1941 onward, during Operation Barbarossa, German troops faced not only the Red Army but one of the harshest winters on Earth. Temperatures plunged to -30°C, engines froze, weapons jammed, and the very air turned deadly. But the most dangerous enemy wasn't always the Soviets. It was the cold, the hunger, and the relentless exhaustion. With supply lines stretched across thousands of miles, rations often failed to arrive. Winter clothing was scarce, and what had been planned as a quick campaign turned into a grinding test of endurance. Soldiers had no choice but to improvise. Out there, in the frozen wastelands of Russia, some of the most shocking survival tricks of the war were born. One of the most infamous involved the use of animal remains, especially horses. Horses were vital to the German army, with millions used to transport supplies. But when those animals died from bullets, exhaustion, or starvation, they became something else entirely. A means to survive. In the depths of winter, a frozen horse could mean life. Some soldiers cut open the carcass and crawled inside, using the remaining warmth and insulation to protect themselves from the freezing wind. Others rendered fat or boiled bones for crude broth, squeezing out every last calorie. It was gruesome, yes, but it was survival. It wasn't a tactic taught in training. It was a last resort, whispered among men who knew that in war, there were no rules against staying alive. Another key survival method involved creating hidden fires, a way to generate heat without revealing their position. In the vast snow-covered plains, a visible plume of smoke could draw instant enemy fire. So soldiers dug shallow pits into the frozen earth, burning dried dung, peat, or smoldering embers instead of open wood fires. Covered with snow or soil, the heat could thaw frozen rations or warm hands without betraying their location. It was a small, almost primitive trick, but it saved countless lives. The German army had underestimated the Russian winter. Many soldiers still wore thin summer uniforms when the temperatures dropped below freezing. With proper clothing scarce, they improvised. They stuffed straw, grass, or even newspapers between layers of fabric for insulation. Curtains, sheets, and even women's clothing from abandoned homes were wrapped around boots and legs to fight frostbite. Desperate, yes, but effective. Sometimes the difference between life and death was nothing more than an extra layer of fabric. One of the most surprising and effective techniques came straight from Arctic survival: the snow cave. By hollowing out a small chamber in a snowbank, soldiers could trap their body heat and shield themselves from the wind. It sounds counterintuitive, but snow can act as a natural insulator. Inside, temperatures could rise above freezing even when it was -30 outside. For men who had marched all day through waist-deep snow, this revelation that snow could actually save them became a secret shared among survivors of the harshest fronts. When food ran out, soldiers turned to whatever they could find. They boiled pine needles into vitamin-rich tea to prevent scurvy, teate moss bark, or scavenged Halferton grain. In places like Stalingrad, some even boiled leather belts and boots to soften them enough to eat. It sounds unthinkable today, but for them, every scrap of material, every ounce of fat, every drop of broth meant another day of life. Even water became a challenge. Melting snow over a fire could expose them to enemy fire, so some learned to melt it in their mouths slowly, conserving heat and avoiding frostbite. Others kept small canteens of snow inside their coats, letting their body warmth do the work quietly, invisibly. But not every survival trick was physical. Mental endurance was just as important. Soldiers learned to maintain routines, rotating guard shifts in shorter intervals, cleaning weapons, singing songs, or writing letters. These small acts weren't just disciplined. They were lifelines, ways to hold on to sanity when everything else seemed lost. Looking back, it's hard not to be shocked by what these men endured. Crawling into horse carcasses, burning dung for heat, boiling leather for food. These aren't the stories found in textbooks, yet they tell the raw truth of war. That survival often depends not on strength or strategy, but on adaptability, courage, and the refusal to give up. The survival tricks of German soldiers on the Eastern Front revealed the brutal reality of combat stripped of heroism and glory, a daily fight to stay alive against the cold, the hunger, and despair itself. If you found this glimpse into the hidden side of World War II compelling, consider subscribing to In the Beginning, where we uncover the forgotten ingenuity and resilience behind history's darkest moments. Because sometimes, the greatest lessons of the past aren't written in books. They're reburied in the snow, waiting to be rediscovered.